Alright, David Harry here, and in this video I'm going to be testing the DJI Mic Mini with the iPhone 16 Pro Max. And I've got to say, after doing a few quick tests with this setup, I'm kind of edging towards the Mic Mini being the best wireless lavalier combination to use with the iPhones. Now, just before I get into this video, these microphones were sent to me by my good YouTube buddy, who is Mr. Kevin Muldoon, who has just received the new Mic 3s. So he sent me down these to have a play with whilst he's using his new Mic 3s. So there'll be a link to Kevin's channel in the video description, and at the end of this video, go along to Kevin's channel and see exactly what he gets up to with the new Mic 3s. Also, this video is going to have some chapters periodically running through it, so if you start getting bored of any one section, just start flipping through to the rest of it. However, I will be doing thorough testing here, testing for range, testing for tonality changes when the microphone is on top of your clothing or under the clothing, then also testing like with the wind filter and stuff like that. So a very comprehensive set of tests. Okay, so for the first test then, I'm just gonna try the microphone without any wind filter on. It is slightly breezy. However, I'm also walking past a road which is about to have a load of cars on it. So what is my dialogue sounding like against all this traffic here? Are we able to clearly still hear my dialogue? I mean, the thing is, I am unreasonably close to this road here, so you know, it is a proper stress test. However, there is no point in like trying to like stress something unless you proper stress it. So like I say, anytime I do this thing by the traffic, it's just to give us an idea as to, you know, what it's going to be like to pick up my dialogue. Because sometimes when you go out and you're vlogging or, well, recording anything, you sometimes just don't know where you're going to end up and how noisy that place is going to be. So it's always good to know, you know, what kind of performance you're going to get out of any particular microphone when there is a lot of other noises around you. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly test something here which is very deliberate. So what it is, I've come to a section of the park where there's hardly any wind or any breezes, and that's so that I can obviously test the microphone in, shall we say, more of a perfect recording scenario. So as I'm turning around right now, what we should notice is I'm flanked by a load of tall trees, and also there's a load of these old like stonework and brickwork and walls and stuff around me here. And this all dates back to when this section of the park here used to be the stables and stuff, which is a very long time ago. Anyway, so the whole point of doing this test right now is because although it's always a good idea to test things like around loads of noise, like by the road, and also test where it is breezy, just so that we can understand and get an idea of how our microphone performs like that, we also have to be fair with these things and also test the microphone in, shall we say, more kind of like more perfect recording scenario. So right now, it doesn't get much better than this as far as recording scenarios are concerned, because I don't have a ton of other noises to compete against as I'm talking, but also there's hardly any breeze at all. Now, just on the point of breeze and wind distortion and breezes are basically the same type of distortions when you get loud sounds. All it really is the overdriving of the capsule inside the microphone. So when a loud noise is created, the actual air pressure is like much higher, and that causes a distortion on the capsule. But it's the same thing with wind. As wind blows against the capsule, it's basically creating high pressure against the capsule, which in turn is what causes the distortion. Anyway, that should do it for this part of the testing. Okay, so I've now got my iPhone locked off on top of my little monopod system here, which is just going to allow me to go hands-free. So right now, I'm just over full arm's length away from the actual phone. Now, what I'm going to do, I'll just take a few more step backs here. I'd say, let's see, where I am now, I'm probably around 8 to 10 feet away. I don't know, 2.5, 3 meters, something in that region. So what I'm going to do is just do a slow turn around, and then that should give us an idea as to whether or not breaking line of sight at such a short distance, if that's going to stop the signal from being picked up from the microphone. So like I say, I'll just slowly turn around, and then at some point I will break line of sight. So right now I will have broken line of sight. Now, can we still hear me talking? I'll just carry on turning around slowly. Now at some point I'm going to catch back up to line of sight, and then that should pick back up. Now that's if I had cut off. So basically, just in case I did cut off when I was turning around, I was just basically saying, once line of sight is broken, you will have difficulties picking up the, the signal. However, at such a short distance, I would hope that that didn't cut out. Now, to be perfectly honest, this distance where I am right now, this is basically maybe the furthest away that I would ever get with something like this. Now, yeah, if it cut out when it turned around, that would possibly be a problem, although I still wouldn't get bent out of shape about these things, because my typical use for these would be at a closer distance without breaking line of sight. However, with that said, let me just do some range testing. Now, I must be about twice the distance again as to where I was just then. I can't tell you, in distance wise what it is. I'll only be just guessing at this point and making ludicrous guesses as well. So what I'm going to do is just do the turn around thing again, and hopefully maybe it does get picked up. But once again, if it does, if it doesn't pick me up as I break line of sight, I definitely won't get all kind of weird and like bent out of shape if it is losing me, when I lose line of sight at these distances. Again, it is so unlikely that I would ever come this far away from any kind of camera or any kind of recording device when doing anything like this. Okay, so I'll just cut, in fact, let me just go quite far back, because it will be quite interesting, to get an idea of what it will do in direct line of sight. Again, I'm not going to hazard guesses here as to the distances that I am, but you can quite clearly see I'm moving really far away from the phone, or this could even be a camera, because of course the receiver for this particular setup, this can actually be used with a 3.5mm mic input, because it's got a 3.5mm output on it as well. Now this distance here is just outrageous. It quite possibly is still picking up in line of sight, but I will do my turn around again. I have now, hold on, I have now blocked line of sight, so it's going to be interesting to see what that does. Then I'll turn back around again, and then if I did cut out, which I suspect I will have done, this will now have picked back up. So in fact, let me go right the way down to this tree line here. Again, this is just an outrageous distance, and there's just no way this is like feasible, or there's no way that this is useful for anybody for this kind of distance here. Okay, so I'll start walking back. Now what's going to be interesting is, or I hope that I didn't cut out at any point when in line of sight. And the reason why I'm saying I hope it hasn't cut out is only because, I do appreciate that some people might want to do a bit of a longer distance than I typically would. So hopefully that real long distance that I've just done there, we've maintained audio in direct line of sight. I doubt very much it would have been picking up as a broke line of sight in any of that there. But like I say, for anybody who would want to go further distances, hopefully that test there has given you a bit of an idea. In fact, you know what, I hope I was actually in the frame there. I'm just looking at the phone and I'm thinking, hold on, was I right over to the one side of the frame? Did I even exit the frame at some point? Anyway, so just to conclude this part of the testing, this distance here, I mean, this right now is about the furthest I'd ever get away from these things. And what you have to remember as well, most of my use for these things is literally to go handheld, like untethered vlogging, as in handheld with the phone, and untethered as in I'm not connected via a cable. So for me, the vast majority of use would be the phone's in my hand, on a little pistol grip system, and I'm just going untethered, as in no cable between me and the phone. And that for me would be the vast majority of my use, and it definitely is going to pick up in that scenario because they're basically always going to be line of sight between the receiver and the transmitters. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is test for whatever tonal changes there may or may not be with and without the Deadcat on. Now, I appreciate I've already done a couple of takes where the Deadcat was off. However, when you're listening to any type of audio, you've only got to listen to it for a relatively short period of time in order for your ears, or more so your brain, to equalize to the sound of that audio. So basically what I'm getting at is here, you know, I will have done these takes without the Deadcat maybe 8 minutes back into the video or something, possibly longer because I do talk a lot. But the point that I'm getting at is it's highly unlikely that you will be able to remember what it sounded like without the Deadcat on. So what I'm going to do right now is to give us an example where as I'm talking, I'm just going to remove the Deadcat, and then that way we will hear immediately what tonal changes there are. So like I say, as I'm talking, I'm just going to grab hold of the Deadcat and then pull it off. So there we go, there's the Deadcat pulled off now. So did we hear much of a tonal difference as I pulled off the Deadcat? Now here's the thing, even if there is a very slight tonal difference, I think that that is something that is like, you know, well, I would put up with that. And the reason why is because if the Deadcat is doing its job and it's protecting the takes from wind and breezes, then I would much rather have a slight tonal change, even if it was negative, rather than have, like, you know, wind destroying the takes. And here's the reason why. You could be out and about and it doesn't matter what you're recording. You could be doing exactly what I'm doing. You could be vlogging, you could be recording some kind of live event, you could be doing some kind of news work, whatever. Well, if you're out and about and you've only got one go at recording something, if that recording has like distortion in it because of wind, that's the take gone. So in that instance, I would say it's always more preferable to have maybe a slightly inferior tonal quality, you know, as long as the upshot is that, like, you don't get a ton of distortion due to wind and breezes. However, was there that much of a tonal change anyway when I took the Deadcat off? And now for the last test. And what I've done here is to put the transmitter on the inside of my t-shirt. So as you should be able to see here, it's just the magnet on this side, but the microphone or the transmitter's on the inside of my t-shirt. Now, the thing with this, there's possibly two things. First one is, it probably doesn't look as obtrusive. Yes, we can still see the magnet there, but again, it probably doesn't look anywhere near as noticeable as like the lavalier or the transmitter does. But the other thing as well here is that we don't have to put the Deadcat on it. So when it's behind some clothing, like a thin t-shirt like this, then it's gonna get, like, you know, protection from wind and stuff anyway. Now, the only thing is, obviously, you can't be putting it under layers and layers of clothing. Like, the heavier the clothing that you put it under, the more effect that clothing is going to have on the tonal quality of the microphone. However, if you're just out and about like I am right now, and you've got maybe just a t-shirt on, or maybe like a thin tracky top or something, yeah, you know, throw it on the underneath or on the inside, and then that's going to give you a number of things, like I say, less obvious, and it's also going to give you wind protection without having to put the Deadcat on. So what I'm going to do is just walk around a little bit here and just make sure that, like, me moving around isn't going to cause too much friction against the microphone. What you have to understand here is that the transmitter, and therefore the microphone itself, is actually placed against my chest at the moment. So as I'm moving around, obviously the microphone moves a little bit and rubs against me. Now, can we hear any kind of like movement off the microphone? Let me just stay quiet. So basically, are we hearing any extra issues to do with like movement against the microphone with either my body or the t-shirt rubbing against it? Hopefully not. And if that is the case, then this might be the preferred way of using the microphone for a lot of people. Again, and I don't want to overstress the point, as much as what these microphones are tiny, you know, they are noticeable, and especially when you put the Deadcats on them, they're very noticeable at that point. Whereas like this, you know, the little tiny magnet on the outside,
definitely nowhere near as noticeable. Anyway, I'm going to shoot off indoors, have a listen to these takes, and then do an end summary.
Okay, so to an end summary, and I will try to get through this as quickly as I can. So straight to the point. Are these DJI Mic Minis the best sounding microphones you've ever heard in your life? Well, the answer to that is super easy. No, these DJI Mic Minis are not the best sounding microphones you will have ever heard in your life. However, I would argue the point to say that they are quite possibly the best microphones to use with the likes of the iPhones, and here's why. These things are just too easy to not use, right? They are super convenient. The size of them is absolutely ridiculous. The power on them, like, you know, the battery power is insane. This battery charging box here, or charging case, is still saying 4 lights on it, which I'm assuming is meaning it's still got 100% power left on it. Now, I've been using one of these mics fairly consistently for about 4 hours. It had been going in and out of the case and stuff, so obviously the microphone will still be getting charged up a bit when it goes into the case, but the case is still saying 100% battery, so I don't know how long that's going to last for, but that feels like it's going to last for days if I was to just use the one microphone. Now, of course, if you're going to use the 2 microphones, the battery's going to deplete faster off the case itself, but nonetheless, this is just massively impressive as far as, like, you know, power usage is concerned. And then what you've got here, the whole package, you know, the Deadcats, the 2 mics, the super small, and even this thing, you know, where they connect with these magnets and stuff. At first, I was kind of like, I'm not too sure about using magnets with these things because, you know, I'm fairly sure I would lose these fairly quickly. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still not 100% kind of, like, you know, tied into the whole thing of using magnets, but on first use, I've got to say, these things are super powerful, super magnetic, and I didn't have any problems with it sticking to me clothes, either with the microphone on top of me, you know, me top, with the magnet underneath, or the reverse. The whole thing just seemed to work super well. So whilst I'm still not 100% sure about, you know, the use of magnets and what have you, I've got to say I didn't have any problems with them. Now, the other thing as well, I've got this plugged into an iPhone 16 Pro Max here, which is obviously USB-C. So what happens is the receiver, when you get the receiver, it comes with a little adapter inside of the case there. Now, this little adapter is a USB-C adapter which just slides onto the receiver, and then you just plug that into the iPhone. Well, the thing is, there's also a lightning option for one of these that you can buy, so you can actually use this entire setup with the older iPhones that use lightning. However, as standard with the USB-C adapter, you can also then use the receiver and the mic set with pretty much anything that's USB-C that is class compliant as far as audio over USB-C is concerned. So things such as Android smartphones, Android tablets, iPhones, desktop computers, Windows and Mac, you know, and then obviously all your laptops and stuff. So like I say, super convenient for a whole bunch of things. Now, one quick thing that I've got to make a point of here as far as the use for iPhone is concerned. What it is, we have got an attenuator and a signal booster on the side of the actual receiver. So this goes from plus 12 down to plus 6, down to 0, down to minus 6, down to minus 12. Now, I had this on minus 12 when I was recording, and the reason why is because I've got a whole bunch of wireless microphones which are compatible with iPhone. Most of them distort. They distort because I've got a loud voice. However, the receiver for this mic set goes down to minus 12, which basically means as long as I'm not distorting the microphone in any way, by the time the signal goes into the microphone, into the iPhone, I'm able to basically reduce the signal going in or attenuate the signal, which means there's no way that I'm going to clip the input on the iPhone either. So that function of the receiver on its own is quite possibly the best function for me personally, but the whole thing as a whole is just amazing. Anyway, yeah, I could blabber on forever about like this setup and stuff, but the bottom line is this: as far as I'm concerned, this is quite possibly the best wireless set that you can get for use with iPhone, or even like say Android phones and stuff like that, basically portable recording devices. Oh yeah, and don't forget, These receivers have also got a 3.5mm output on them, so you can plug these directly into video cameras and camcorders and like stills cameras that have got like, you know, a 3.5mm mic input as well. So like I say, super convenient. Now, the one other thing that I would mention here is that since the Mic 3 come out, I had a look on Amazon. This double mic set is now £99 here in the UK, so it's obviously dropped its price everywhere. So £99 for the set with the you know, the charging box and the 2 mics and everything. However, you can get a single mic set, which is like the receiver and transmitter, and they come with like little charging blocks. The single mic set doesn't have the charging case, but I think that was £55. So £55 is just like an absolute steal if you're just doing stuff on your own, like for vlogging or a little bit of like documenting of stuff that you're filming and things like that. So right now, with the new price of these things, I've got to say nothing can touch them. Now, will the Mic 3 sound better? Well, that's going to be very kind of like down to your own personal opinion and stuff. Now, the Mic 3s have definitely got more functions than the Mic Minis, but if you consider that like a pair of these Mic Minis cost now under £100 and you're paying closer to £300, I think, for the Mic 3s, there's a huge price difference in it. So if you don't need all that extra functionality that you get with the Mic 3s, and say you don't need the inbuilt recording and stuff like that, and obviously if you like the sound of like the Mic Minis, then the Mic Minis are an absolute no-brainer. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to shut my trap now because I'll just carry on and on and on. But the bottom line is, I absolutely love these mics. I think they're super convenient. Yes, I would like them to sound a bit different for my particular voice, but overall, I'm not going to raise any complaints about audio quality or sound quality or tonal quality based on the fact that there are far too many plus points for me to like get bent out of shape about some of the bits that I'm not particularly happy about. And lastly as well, a massive thank you to Kevin Muldoon, one of my favourite YouTubers, and don't forget to go and check out his channel to see what he does with the new Mic 3s. There'll be links to stuff and whatnot in the video description, all that normal thing. Oh yeah, and if you've liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up and a sub to the channel. It will be absolutely awesome. I'm David Harry. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.